Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Courageous Leadership Academy Live. Really excited today to be chatting with friend and colleague Yakentha Britton, and we're going to be talking about how we can advance the leadership landscape through being intentional with our efforts for diversity and inclusion in both our hiring and our promoting practices. Yakentha and I connected through social media, and it has been wonderful to get to know her and collaborate with her this year through just that initial connection through Instagram. We connected and clicked, and it's been great. And I really enjoyed getting to know her, and we've done some collaboration together. She is a career development leader and advocate, and I'm thrilled that she is joining us today to share her insights and we'll have a conversation about how we can really help advance the leadership landscape. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Yakentha into the session here. Hi.
Hey, Dr. Kelly.
Welcome. How are
Thank you? I'm great. How are you?
Great. Yeah. So thank you
Awesome.
again. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is just a really critical conversation, and I'm so excited that we're able to talk about this today.
Yeah, same. Thanks for having me. It's such an important conversation. Super excited to obviously connect with you again. It's always a great time. So thanks again for
Yeah.
having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk first about, what does it mean to have a workplace that is diverse and inclusive? Like, what does that mean when we're talking about that? Let's start there.
So, Dr. Kelly, that's actually a really great question. I mean, honestly, the diversity and inclusion strategic initiatives have definitely developed more throughout the years as companies realize it's such a critical piece in their business. It's no longer just a thought process or something we would like to do. I think companies really understand that it's super vital. And so, to your point, into that question, from my perspective, I feel like that definition has evolved for me over
Mm,
time, just in the gaining and understanding of, because we hear diversity and inclusion a lot together, right? But they're really
mm-hmm.
not interchangeable terms. They're really
Right.
exclusive in their own right. So diversity portion being, what does the makeup of that organization look like? And naturally we want to think, it's race, but it's actually your nationality, your creed, disability, veteran status. Whereas inclusion really means how belong or how involved, engaged do your employees feel with being in part of that organization? Like, do they feel involved? Do they feel heard? Do they feel like they are truly a part of the organization across the board, meaning not just in pockets of it, but holistically? Do they feel like they belong? And belonging is a terminology I love. And I think that,
Mm-hmm.
at its core, I think we can all relate to that, right? Belonging, what does that mean? When we hear that word, it just means I want to be heard, I want to be seen, I want to be felt and thought of, considered. And so, in a nutshell, if I had to describe, diversity and inclusion, that to me for me, that's what it's evolved and become defined as.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And I love when you talk about that sense of belonging and everybody
Yeah.
feeling like they belong. It's not just enough to, yeah, it's yes, the first step is having a diverse workforce, and that's fantastic, but
Yeah.
that's not enough. Everybody needs to feel that they truly are, a part of that and that belonging. And I think what comes to mind when you say that too is when I do a lot of talking with people about a safe space for communication, and that
Hmm.
everybody needs to feel safe. Everybody feels like they need to belong, and that really ties together so well.
Absolutely.
Because if people feel like they belong, then hopefully it will be that safe space for open communication and dialogue.
And I think you just hit it right on the nail in terms of like why a topic such as this is super important. We talk about the safe space, we talk about sharing of ideas, but you know, as we kind of discussed earlier, it is so vital for employees to feel like they can share their ideas, be heard, and really add value in a meaningful way. And it's always a win for organizations that embrace that.
Yeah. which is a great segue to think about, this has been as you said, an evolving conversation, and
Yep.
thankfully a conversation that's happening more regularly. Why is that so important for companies, for workplaces to make this a priority?
Absolutely. I mean, you know what? One thing that really goes hand in hand that companies are realizing, the research has been done, is not just in attracting talent, but retaining talent. And that is super vital. It's critical. It's something that, quite honestly, I don't know if companies emphasize enough. And most importantly, it's one of the largest expenses that an organization can make. As you know, from a training and development
Hmm.
perspective, it is super vital that that companies understand what type of training, development, and the needs of their employees are. And much like, with what we're talking about now with diversity and inclusion, retention is super critical. And what
Mm,
companies have realized is that, guess what? When their talent pool is diverse, when they're making meaningful strides and they're not just having strategic initiatives, but they're really executing it in a visible manner to their organization, they're able to retain talent. And it's honestly, who doesn't want to retain talent, right?
right.
When you can keep that experience within the organization, you can keep that tenure within the organization, but most importantly, as you create that culture, you're able to kind of really solidify what that synergy is within the organization. And so super, super important as it relates to retention, as we know, impacts the bottom line. The
Yeah.
other key point is, I think you mentioned it earlier, just the sharing of ideas and different
Hmm.
perspectives. There is no doubt that companies know, especially in this year of all changes, what we thought was great kind of went out the window. We need
Yep.
innovation, right? We
Yes.
need innovation. We need fresh new ideas and perspectives. And what better way to do that in a organization or within a talent pool that is so diverse or has different backgrounds and perspectives to come together and say, hey, have you thought about it in this angle? Have you thought about it this way? We notice time and time again that companies that really emphasize in diverse talent honestly attract some of the top talent. Let's
Right.
be honest, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and
Yeah.
as you really start to do that, and as companies start to really focus on, okay, here's a talent pool. We want to make sure that we're really being intentional in diversifying our talent pool. What you start to create is an attraction. People can't help but to say, wow, I can see myself there, right? I can see myself
Right.
at X, Y, and Z organization. So I want to apply there. I want to tell others about it. Before you know it, what you're doing is you're building a brand, you're building a level of attraction for different talent. And as a result of that, you're now building your talent pool, right?
Right.
And we all know that it's always great when we find talent that really seeks out organizations and says, hey, you know what? I've been following you guys on social media. I see what your culture is like. I noticed that you're really promoting a lot of philanthropy that's, in collaboration with organizations of different backgrounds and different mission statements. And I can relate to that. And so, what does that create? It just creates that initial buy in, and quite frankly, it really allows the companies and organizations to attract the type of talent that they want. And
Right.
so it's just, I mean, to me, it's like no brainer, right?
Right.
Let's invest in this. Let's do this. Just nothing but positives.
Yeah. Oh man, there was just, so much that you said in there. That was
Yeah,
like just gold. So many
yeah,
layers of just amazing information from, like you said, at the base level, bottom line, we know that having that diverse and inclusive workforce, really just at the very basic level is going to
yeah.
help a business do better. But yeah, that, you just feel that, that excitement of having a place that is just on fire, because you do have that diversity of ideas. And that's just, yeah, that's amazing. And
I
it's
mean,
so true.
It is, it is. I really, that one piece, that ideas piece as well that we kind of just
Yes.
touched on is so huge because we know we need to be innovative, right? We know that as companies that need to thrive in, I guess, really in a market space that is really saying, hey guys, we need to go faster, we need to be more efficient, we need to really look at controls and how we do things. Everything is moving digital. Ideas, when we talk about ideas, that is so important. And back to
Hmm.
your safe space comment, there's something about feeling like your presence and your contributions are valued and taken
Yes.
seriously by the organization. And you're seeing it kind of manifest and unfold in a variety of people that
Right.
you can relate to, that may look like you, that it's really something meaningful. And the level of influence that it has on an organization internally and both from an external talent acquisition perspective is quite frankly, it's superior. I mean, we talk about all these different strategies on how to retain and attract talent, but that piece alone, just being able to share ideas and know that your ideas are heard, and valued from top to bottom of the organization. That's another critical piece, right? Making sure
Yes.
that like
Yeah.
everyone within the organization has buy-in, starting from leadership all the way down. And so
Yeah.
what you kind of see unfold is that people want to be involved in that. They want to be part of these networking groups. Employee networking groups is something that, again, we're seeing more companies are taking additional time and resources to build out so that we have that sense of synergy and fellowship and understanding of backgrounds and
Right.
what people are like inside and outside of work. It just
Right.
honestly, it just creates for a better workplace and a workplace that's definitely most cohesive.
I love that. It's and one of the things, I mean, I loved everything you just said, but especially that sense of that those diverse perspectives and diverse ideas and experiences, that's value added. That is, that people feel that they're valued, but also for leadership to understand that that really is a value add, that really does make your team better, your organization better. That it's not about, okay, let's just have a diverse workforce, but then not capitalize on the value that that diversity brings. It really is about letting people be their full
Ooh,
authentic self
I love
and
that.
recognizing that for the value that it brings, that that's a
I love that.
positive thing.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. No, you are so on point with that, Dr. Kelly.
Yeah.
It again, like it kind of
Yeah.
brought me back to the feedback, right? The
Yes.
feedback loop
Yes.
and getting that different
Yes.
different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about feedback a lot in the past,
Mm-hmm.
but again, just to not shy away from things that we don't know or,
Right.
things that we may not understand. But how
Yes.
great is it to have someone sit in your corner that is aligned with your mission to say, hey, have we thought about this? Or maybe if we can look at it from this lens. I mean, literally from a client perspective or dealing with customers, specifically customer facing
Mm-hmm.
organizations, there's something to be said about that, right? What do your
Yes.
customers look like, right? What do you want your customers to look like? Do you
Right.
want them to look diverse? Do you want them to be from
Right.
all paths and walks of life? And I mean, how do you get to connect with them? We know that relationship management is of the essence as it relates to honestly anything, right?
Right,
Nowadays,
right. Yeah,
um,
relationships are key to everything.
right.
Yeah,
How do
yeah,
you connect to the consumer?
right,
How do you retain them, right? And part
right.
of that is really with relationships, them getting to know you. And I think there's something to be said when you have a diverse base of staff and employees that's supporting and championing behind the mission, to really say, hey, we relate to everyone. I mean,
Right.
how beautiful is that, right? I mean, I'm kind of getting
Yes.
a little passionate about this, but I mean, really, when you think about it in its biggest sense, I mean, it's really something remarkable when organizations can really fulfill the mission, of not just saying, hey, we're committed to do this, but really making an intentional effort to make it ongoing. Because
Correct.
honestly, it touches so many pieces of the organization. We're talking
Right.
about recruitment, but quite frankly, it really touches every area of the organization as it honestly should.
Right. Absolutely. So before we move into the next question there, I realized I've forgotten the introduction to tell people if they have questions,
Oh yeah.
they can feel free to enter those into the chat, and we'll do our best to keep an eye on that. And we'll do our best to answer questions
Yeah.
as they come in and or comments.
Yeah.
So and understanding the value and the importance of having a diverse workforce, how can companies work to diversify their talent pools? What are some things that they can do?
So I think that's a really great question, Dr. Kelly, and that quite frankly, I think that's something that many organizations are like, hey, where do we even start with this?
Right, right.
And one of the key things that we kind of talked about earlier on is creating employee networking groups, right?
Mm,
So, that to me has been like awesome to kind of be a part of. I've dealt with employee networking groups in two major large organizations, and my hope is that all companies take advantage of that. And what that really is it's pockets and pieces of spreading diversity and inclusion initiatives throughout your organization through understanding and knowledge share. And
mm,
really just being able to say, hey, this is a group, that, focuses on different initiatives or what they can relate to personally, and they're able to share that with their staff, and
right.
they're able to share that with their colleagues. It's a piece of them. And one thing that has came up before is that we have these different ERG groups, and for some of you that may or may not know what the ERG groups can consist of, quite frankly, it can consist of any diversity led or organization. We have Latino organizations, African American ERG groups, pride groups, specific religious groups. Either way, just really a level set of different diverse groups that typically are led by team members. And so, normally there's some sponsorship, perhaps from a leadership perspective, but essentially you have employees that are leading those efforts. They have, touch base points where they make create meetings or activities where they invite different coworkers and colleagues to join them. But what's
Hmm.
kind of neat is that you don't have to necessarily look like the group and or personally relate because you may not identify, but the idea is you get exposure. And I think that
Hmm.
that is super it's super important, but I think that it also creates a different level of understanding from employee to employee. So now I
Right.
don't just see you as Kelly that I interact with in emails, and we interact through different transactions, but there's a different sense of understanding, which again enhances culture. To me,
Right.
it just really builds on that, and creates that feeling of belonging. Now I get to understand perspectives, or when things, as we know, happen outside of the workplace, which we can't sometimes we really can't avoid.
Right.
We do bring outside to work, right? And I
Right.
think
Yeah,
that there's
absolutely.
something to be understood and appreciated by that. But now I have a level of empathy, right? I have a different level of understanding of your perspective. Even though I may not personally have experienced it, it's just that knowledge share, and really that enlightenment of understanding what differences look like. I get to
Right.
appreciate it too when I see it in my clients, right? It's and
Right.
that you kind of see that unfold, in different ways throughout the
Right.
organization. Another thing that's pretty common is connecting with your social media strategy. So,
Right.
as you know, like we're in a world of social media right now.
Hmm.
It's important. It's important to leverage it because let's be real. Like I don't know when the next time will be where we can kind of link up together and do this
Right.
face to face. But gosh,
Right.
we can connect virtually, thankfully, and
Right.
keep that synergy going. And so that is something that a lot of organizations have really enhanced, and they've leveraged social media. So now we have social media external, but a lot of companies have internal social media platforms. Have
Right.
you heard of this before?
Yes. Yeah.
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 So it's pretty cool, and people get to post about different topics. People can like and share, follow threads around certain topics. And
Mm-hmm.
again, what you're doing is again enhancing and creating that synergy and exposure to different backgrounds and different perspectives or someone else's life and ideas.
Right,
Again, another way to share and promote just our diverse way of thinking, right?
right,
And then
right,
there's the external piece. What does your makeup look like to the world?
right,
And let's be honest, right? Sometimes seeing is believing, but when when I shouldn't say I, but like if a candidate or a prospective candidate is looking at an organization and diversity is of importance to them, I'm gonna kind of check out your social media page, right? I'm gonna check to
right,
see, okay, what does your current team look like? What does that makeup look like? Can I see myself there? What are
right,
you engaged with? I see a mission statement on the site, but like what are you doing with
right,
the mission, right? How are you leveraging those initiatives? How are you leveraging your team members? How does that makeup look like literally in photos or
right,
in
right.
video, right? So
Yeah.
I think that is like a piece that a lot of organizations probably aren't really leveraging today still,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of need for that, mostly because people are looking for that. Candidates
Right.
that care about diversity are looking at your pages, LinkedIn, your Facebook, your Instagram. We're looking. So that's definitely a big piece. An employee referral program, a
Mm,
robust referral program. So imagine that, right? Like I
yeah.
think that of all the the types of ways that you can acquire or you can attract talent, one of the most effective ways that organizations have found to retain talent and attract talent that is like what they have currently is
Right.
through a robust employee referral program. And the
Yeah.
way to kind of push that over the top sometimes is to incentivize that. So if you like where you work at, you love where you work at, let's tell people about it. Let's
Right.
scream it in the mountaintops because I want more of you. I want more
Right.
people like all of you. And so what that does is again, you're creating that buy-in from the
Mm-hmm.
organization that like, okay, I get it. I do love working here. I do enjoy, some of the things that we're doing specifically around, the fact that I feel like I belong here. I feel involved. I feel like I I want to be part of the mission. And so I just want to replicate that. And I want to attract other people that are like me to come and join, right?
Yeah.
If it's
Yeah.
good, I'm going to tell everyone about it, right?
Right.
Kind of like reviews. So
Right.
definitely a great way to diversify the talent pool. If again your core base, meaning the practices are in place to really be intentional around a diverse talent pool. If you have that existing diverse talent pool and you can replicate that, you're just growing that essentially,
Right.
hopefully through a robust referral program. Career
Yeah.
fairs, right? We used to do career fairs a lot physically, but that's kind of different now, right? It's probably going to look a little bit different from a virtual perspective, but there is talent out there, specifically at the collegiate level as well, right?
Right.
Being
Yeah.
able to partner with colleges, historically Black colleges, colleges that really work with or organizations that work with veterans. I mean, these are different ways that you can partner and really collaborate with organizations that deal with subsets or groups of diverse pools to really attract talent. The talent is out there, but again, it just sometimes it really takes being different and strategic in how
Right.
you go about doing that. So
Right.
those are just some of the high level ones I would say that are they're to me they're pretty key, specifically in where we're at today in the world, right? Of
Right.
virtual land, but it's
Right.
definitely possible, but it definitely takes a little bit of strategy.
Yeah. No, and that's, I mean, those are some great suggestions and certainly things that people can do, I don't want to say easily. I mean, they take effort, but
Right,
nothing that you mentioned is a huge lift. Nothing that you mentioned is a huge cost.
right.
Each of those
Good point.
things takes intentional effort, but none of them were crazy outrageous. And so I think, that that's fantastic, because often I think people think, okay, this is going to be this huge endeavor. I don't know where to start. It's going to, cost us X number of dollars, and not that it's not worth that, but how do we budget for that? And, but everything you mentioned, they're very effective, but simple, to implement. But the key theme there is that you need to do the work and be intentional, and put forth
Absolutely.
that effort. And I think that
Absolutely.
that's sometimes where people maybe miss the mark, is they maybe try one thing and, oh, well, that didn't really work, so okay, we tried. But being willing to really be intentional, attempt different approaches and multiple approaches, and really continue to do that work.
Yeah.
Then you'll have that ripple effect, both in terms of, like you said, with your current workforce, your current team, but then also as you bring in more people, as you do that, that ripple effect is going to happen, and it'll become easier and easier. But you still have to put in the work.
Absolutely. No, for
Yeah.
sure. It is not a one-stop shop deal, much like any branch of an organization, right? Like,
Right.
we
Right.
don't really just say, "Hey, we did marketing for a month, so we're good,"
Right.
right? It's
Yeah. Right.
and it's the same thing for sales. Like, we don't say,
Yeah.
"Hey,
Right.
sales, like, I know we like talked about our training and our goals for this year. This was the annual hoorah, go ahead and
Right.
get it, and we're done."
We're
Just
done. Right.
doesn't work that way. It really is a commitment, and quite honestly, it really should be a standalone piece within the organization where you have some level of oversight. I shouldn't say some, but you should have some form of oversight,
Right.
with someone that's representing that and really managing that piece across the organization.
Mm,
It shouldn't really just be in certain pockets. It shouldn't just
right.
stay or stop at recruiting. It really should go across the entire organization. And again, it has to be an ongoing commitment, to your point.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I completely
Yep.
agree. So, what are some practices that you tend to see that companies engage in, and whether they're conscious, like,
Yep.
or maybe they're just not even aware? What are some practices that you see that really inhibit that diverse talent pool, or those promoting practices? What are some things that companies do that really inhibit that progress?
So I think, much like anything else, you know, any thriving piece of an organization really needs support, right? It
Mm,
needs the support, the attention that it needs. And we know now, most organizations know that in thriving or in driving a major, not just an initiative, but something that really becomes a core piece part of your business, it has to
hmm.
start at the top, meaning like the
Right.
CEO, president level, right? There has
Yeah.
to be that buy-in, there has to be that engagement to say, hey, this is important to me. And I'm not just saying it, it's not just a mission statement on our website, but I'm actively a part of this. I'm actively promoting this. I'm actively engaged and providing that support so that everyone around me and at different levels across the organization can really find value in this, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
So I think that that's super important. The level of support that diversity and inclusion as a function receives within an organization. The other thing I think is that, honestly, really from a hiring practice perspective, right? How does that look like for candidates that I don't know. I mean, I'm a fan of I am a fan of panel interviews.
Okay. Yeah.
Panel interviews, really to just get a different insight and perspective from different people.
Right.
And when I say that, I really mean I'm trying to be intentional in saying that, we all get different perspectives, obviously, in meeting people, right? Especially from a first impression perspective. But how
Right.
great is it to have two to three perspectives where we can all see collectively across the board what the feedback was, what did we rate the candidate in terms of their proficiency level, to
Right.
get really a form of consistency and hopefully eliminate biases, because
Right.
that honestly does exist.
Absolutely.
Quite frankly, I would love, in a perfect world, I would love a world where a talent pool came in through this, either through the system or through whatever form of acquisition that you get, and It's just literally the person's skills, their experience, and background.
Right.
Okay, what does that mean?
Right.
That might mean no name. It might not, it
Right.
might mean no location. And I don't know, I just think that there's something to be said about that to eliminate just whatever natural, or unforeseen biases that may occur just in pre-screening candidates to get in.
Right.
Really relying on the information, right? So I think that that's a piece as well. And then another piece that I kind of see organizations do sometimes is they parcel out recruitment.
Mm.
So, one thing that we'll see from time to time is you'll have specific recruitment teams for specific subsets of groups, right? And they kind of go about their own way and they have different leading function or leaders that lead those functions. So, for instance, you might have a campus recruiter, you might have a sales recruiter, you have one for ops, one for technology. And so, what happens is everyone's kind of on their own path and, recruiting typically with the same practices, right? But you
Right.
kind of lose that again, that key initiative, which is, focusing on diversified talent. And so, what my suggestion always is to organizations that, kind of want to work that way is to have some form of governing oversight from a diversity and inclusion perspective to oversee that so that
Okay.
again you're having someone monitor and ensure that practices are being done, that eliminate any form of what we kind of talked about, right? Biases or that are really being intentional with where we're sourcing candidates from. And so I think that that's actually, one of the some of the key areas to me that kind of stand out when we talk about like some of the maybe, you know, practices that kind of can improve.
Right. That's great. Yeah, and again, like so many wonderful things in there. Yeah, we could tease out and talk about each one of those probably for an hour.
Yeah,
Um, and I love to yeah, the idea of panel interviews. I'm a big supporter of that as well, because often we all have biases. We all have them. That's
yeah,
just even if we want to be as progressive as possible and open minded as possible, we all have them, even if we're not aware. And
yeah.
um, yeah, so having a panel of diverse individuals,
Yeah.
is
There it is again.
yeah, that's a great way to really balance that out and help promote, um, a
Fairness.
more fair and equitable hiring practice. So
Absolutely.
I completely agree, and I'm a big believer in that type
Yeah.
of process as well.
I,
Yeah.
definitely. I think, and you've made a great note in terms of just like the type of leadership, right? The
Hmm.
leadership, the how diverse is your leadership team as well?
Right.
Because again, this is all things that kind of keep a balance and perspective across the board at all levels, when hiring. And
Right.
again, to your point, when you're doing a panel interview, to get again that insight from different perspectives and
Right.
really to have it in such a way that's open to not just you internally as an organization but
Right.
visibly open to the candidate experience as well. I think it really does says a lot. It says a lot about the organization. To me it says
Right.
that you were intentional with this, like this is something that's
Yes.
important to you, that the practices are fair and that they are consistent across the board. And honestly, hiring and the recruitment process is really a critical piece to ensure that that's done.
Right.
We've had pockets, I've seen pockets of, areas and organizations, that, exist that potentially have areas that do one thing and then other areas do something different. And while
Right.
I understand that there's not really a cookie cutter approach in how you, I don't know, ask questions or the types of questions that we're asking, right? Because there's different pieces of the business. I think at the core, when it comes to the hiring practices in itself, there's really an importance that it's consistent and that there's that branding, that mission, that culture moves across the recruitment team.
Right.
That piece, I can't even stress enough how important that is. The
Yeah.
candidate experience depends on it. Your company's branding depends on that. We are like recruiters are the first contact
Right.
that most candidates make. And
Right.
so if your recruiters don't embody, the mission and understand the initiatives and really want to live by that, it's really difficult, right, to kind of ensure
Hmm.
that that's being replicated in a consistent manner with every touch, with every candidate that they interact with.
Right.
And it's a pretty big weight. I don't know if any recruiters will look at this, but recruiters don't get enough credit in terms of how important and critical their function is to the organization. It's a
Right.
heavy, heavy, heavy role, in my
Yeah.
opinion. And it's you kind of think of them as like your brand ambassadors, and it's a big deal, right?
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
you're the first person a candidate's going to talk to. If it goes bad or great, you will forever have that impression of the organization through the contact of a
Right.
recruiter with
Yeah.
that direct and hiring manager, but again
Yeah.
with a recruiter. So
Yeah. No, it's a
yeah.
great point that that first impression is key. And um, you know, I think it's great too to think about if there is an organization that really is taking a look at at their leadership landscape and taking a look at their team, and they're saying, okay, we do have some shortcomings here. um, Maybe we should get some outside help. Maybe they have
Mhm.
internal recruiters, but maybe they need to look at an external recruiting agency that can help them, have that appropriate panel interview or make that good first impression in a way, not that they can't make their own good first impression, but maybe they need some help from a recruiter just to help in that effort. And that's okay. It's okay,
Right.
to recognize that and to consult as they need, get help from a recruiter as they need. Because you're right, that is so critical.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you hit it on the nail with that, Dr. Kelly. I mean, that is a resource that I don't think is utilized enough, but
Right.
quite frankly, it's the type of resource we go after as well. I mean, there are plenty of, recruitment agencies that focus on diverse recruitment.
Right.
And so, being able to partner with or, companies like that can really attract top talent, um, is it's beneficial. It can be
Right.
super beneficial to the organization, but the other piece is that the practice in itself is kind of it helps eliminate certain biases as well. So from
Right.
a
Yes.
recruitment perspective as an agency, typically when you showcase a candidate to a client, we're not sending the full information. Much like what I was saying, in a perfect,
Right.
world would
Yes.
just be like no name,
Right.
no address, right? You just get that snapshot of what my experience is, what my background is, and so make the determination if we want to talk or not. And so
Right.
that's kind of what the agencies do, right? They become that middle person to kind of say, hey, here's someone that fits the requirements on paper. We're not going to give you the contact information. You don't know where they live, but does this look like a great fit to you? And so
Right.
again, what you're doing there is just giving yourself an open opportunity to consider various candidates,
Right.
of
Yes.
different backgrounds, really, again, solely based on what are their credentials,
Right.
and their experience level as it relates to the role that you want to fill.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, and thinking about, we're talking about different practices and things that agencies can do. Why is it important for agencies? And I think, we've probably touched on some of this, but if there's
Mhm.
additional things you want to answer, why is it important for leaders to manage and audit their bias practices, related to promotion and hiring?
Yeah, I think that is super important, Dr. Kelly. I think you're right. We kind of touched base on that throughout the live to an extent, but I mean, there has to be some form of governance and audit, and quite frankly, accountability to an extent, right, across the
Right.
organization to say that, hey, these are the practices that we put in place, but how are we performing against that, right?
Right.
Are they really being conducted throughout the organization in a consistent fashion? And I think that's super important because, much like any other business organization that we have, we want to understand, we want controls in place, right? But we want to
Right.
understand if what we put in place is working or not. And
Right.
so, if things aren't working, we always want to improve, right? We can be better.
Right.
what does that look like? And really, that's where the audits come into play. Being able to balance, load, and check, you know, just what is being done day to day.
Right.
And again, maybe surveys too. Like, what is the experience
Mm,
like? Gosh, we have surveys now that are all publicized, right? Really, with all types of pieces of the process, whether
right.
you're an employee. Glassdoor, as we know, is one of the top, I would probably say one of the top resources used right now by candidates to review really the experience of folks that are inside of the organization.
Right.
And they also have a section that surveys interviews. So
Mm,
how did interviews go? Like, and people can leave comments and feedback around that. And so I think much like what we talk about when we discuss feedback,
right.
um, and taking the fear out of feedback, we should take the fear out of feedback across the board, specifically
Yes.
even around this. And this is, I
Right.
think, in my opinion, is a really great way to audit that things were things were done fair and that the
Right.
candidate experience felt right. The other piece I think that is really I think it's such a great piece that, and you and I probably touch base on that, is receiving feedback post interview.
Yes.
Gosh, how awesome is that? How important is that?
Yes.
How critical is that, right? To you've
Right.
taken time out of a candidate's day, it may have been multiple days, right? To
Right.
screen them, to face interview with them, whatever the case may be, we've taken time from the candidate, and thankfully they wanted to come. They wanted to start the process with us. They went through the process, and they may not have worked out, right? We
Right.
chose another candidate.
Right.
Providing feedback to a candidate is super, super effective. It's
Yes.
effective for the branding perspective, but again, I think that's another piece that kind of audits the process in terms of understanding why this person wasn't a fit, right?
Right.
Why didn't they make the cut? And
Right.
we've talked about it. It might have just been that the person was super close neck and neck with another candidate, but there
Right.
was something else that took this candidate to the next level, or that made them say that this is the person I want to move forward with. But
Right.
leaving it open ended, right, for the candidate that
Right.
you decline really creates a level of opportunity for misunderstanding,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, just angst that
Right.
shouldn't even be necessary.
Right.
And so again, I think there's something to be said with either the hiring manager or recruiter to respond back to the candidate and say, hey, just wanted to provide you feedback about the interview, just to
Right.
ensure that again things are consistent. The reason for declination was valid. Just again, another way to say, hey, we are credible in our practices. We really appreciate the time that you took to, talk to us and
Right.
engage with us. And quite frankly, again, just providing feedback, which
Right.
again, it's not the best news, but people
Right.
appreciate hearing something versus nothing.
Absolutely. That is, wow, that's so good.
Yeah.
I again thinking about, yeah, it all comes back to communication and dialogue. And
Yeah.
so, throughout the whole process of really trying to cultivate a workforce that is diverse and people feel like they belong and it's inclusive, that is all about communication and open dialogue. And then in thinking, yes, about the hiring and promoting process, again, that feedback loop and that conversation and dialogue. And yeah, I love that you said that about providing that feedback, because yeah, of course, if we really wanted that job and we didn't get it, of course there's some heartache there and some disappointment, but getting some valuable feedback from that employer, to say, why maybe they selected another candidate, but these were your strengths, or maybe here's some areas that if we were impressed by you, but if you maybe had this other qualification or this skill set, if you could work on that, that would make you an even more competitive candidate. That gives them, like you said, that closure. It helps them understand that it is a fair hiring practice, and it gives them some things that they can continue to work on. And I think too, agencies, recruiters and hiring managers soliciting feedback from those candidates and saying, what did we do well? What could we
Mhm.
improve? Did this feel like a fair process? I think often, we are, like you said, taking the fear out of feedback. We're afraid sometimes to hear that because we're afraid of what people are going to say. Like, oh, what are they going to say?
Right.
We want to think we're doing everything right. We're afraid that they're going to say that it wasn't fair. And if it wasn't fair, then we have to really take a look at ourselves and be honest and have that self-reflection. And a lot of people are afraid to do that. But that's where the growth happens, and that's where you're going to get better. So yeah, asking those, because like you said, you've taken time out of that person's day, they've invested energy in you.
Yeah.
So, asking for their feedback is a critical way to really help audit your processes from, that perspective. So yeah, I love that you brought that concept in there.
And I mean, honestly, I mean, spot on with all of that, Dr. Kelly. I mean, literally, if you don't ask them, they're gonna find a way to give it to you, and it's gonna
Right.
be public. So it's like,
Right.
wouldn't we want to get ahead of that, right? To an extent,
Right.
to just say, hey, just want to connect with you, and
Right.
again, to your point, communication. Communication is
Yes.
so important.
It's
It's super
everything.
vital. It's everything. But
Yes. Yeah.
gosh, it is so important in the recruitment process as well.
Yes.
I mean, just not leaving people in limbo, keeping
Right.
them engaged throughout the process. But then again, to your point and what we discussed, really giving that feedback after the fact
Mm-hmm.
really again solidifies your practices, ensures that you're really taking a hard look at why people made the cut, why did they fit, and
Right.
why didn't they fit. Much like what we were talking about from a promotional perspective as well, right? Um, Promotions, wow, gosh, I can go on and on about that topic in itself, but I
Right.
think at the core, organizations really are looking or taking companies specifically that are laser focused on diverse talent, attracting and retaining top talent, understand that they need to develop, right? Through training and
Mm-hmm.
development. It's really
Yeah.
important. That piece, along with mentorship and sponsorship, is just, it's everything, Dr. Kelly. I mean, I was just literally thinking just the other day about all the various people that have poured into me, right, throughout my
Mm.
career in different ways, and just really taking time to get to know who I was, getting to understand, what am I ambitious about, like what makes me me, but then
Right.
also really giving me some form of coaching to say, hey, Kenta, this could have been done better. And guess what? We have that level of engagement and understanding to where I'm going to receive that, and I'm going to utilize it, right? I'm going to take
Right.
the
Right.
feedback and put it into practice because I really genuinely care about the person's feedback and thought process and opinion and what they have to say. And so
Right.
I think there's something to be said again when we have diverse talent from top to bottom. Because now
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about mentorship and we talk about connecting people, I mean, mentors, let's, a lot of times we see a piece in us, right? We see components of us in someone else that we're attracted to, that we say, I want to aspire to that. I can see myself doing this like X person. But part of
Mm-hmm.
that really requires representation, right?
Right.
And honestly, sometimes it's not just representation in how we look, but of course in different ways too. Our beliefs, our morals, our
Right.
thought process. At the core, hopefully, majority of your leadership team hopefully have some of those core morals and some of the things that organizations label it as is really in their core values. And so, yeah, we're talking about that piece, but we're also talking about just really from person to person. And so,
Right.
having a robust mentorship program, I mean, gosh, that when we talk about retention, that piece alone, I tell you this, like people will stay for people
Right.
for their
Right.
relationships and rapport with other
Absolutely.
people, right?
Yes.
They love
Yeah.
working for
Absolutely.
you. They love being under your leadership. They love being under
Yes.
your guidance. You're a mentor. You support them. I mean, that's something that's unique that you
Mm-hmm.
really can't find at other organizations, right? That money can't buy, quote unquote.
Right, right.
Having that space where you feel safe and encouraged and, really again heard, it speaks volumes. I mean,
Absolutely.
people will stay because they feel engaged, because they
Right,
feel like they are heard and they are valued. And so a lot of that really, again, is it works a lot hand in hand with some of those things that we're talking about. Having some form of mentorship program or sponsorship, having a training and development program that really outlines career pathing for people that want to advance. And so,
right,
what you're able to do there again is you're documenting progression and you're documenting requirements and specific tools that can be utilized by your talent pool and your existing employees to promote.
right,
Promoting from within, amazing.
right,
Amazing cost savings for the organization as
right.
well, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of training that doesn't have to occur. You're keeping that knowledge within the organization. There's so much value in promoting from within. But then again, as we talk about promoting diverse talent, it's really
right,
making that opportunity for all to and creating it in such a way that it's accessible to anyone that really wants to take it on.
right.
And again, that might be like what you mentioned, hiring a consultant, right?
Mm-hmm.
That really is laser focused in helping you develop that roadmap for your talent pool. And then again, being intentional in utilizing it, right? And
Right, right,
developing the team members that you have onto higher levels, into leadership roles, and then hopefully creating that synergy throughout the organization, for years to come.
right. Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea of the mentorship piece and helping develop your team members and being, again, really intentional about that. Because
Yeah.
I think sometimes those mentor-mentee relationships, if there's not a defined program within an organization, they can just sometimes happen organically. And
Yeah.
maybe the mentee is seeking out the mentor, and they ask. Or sometimes you'll have somebody that's willing to just take somebody under their wing, and it just happens, and that's great. But that's not everybody's going to feel comfortable initiating that themselves. And
So
so if
true.
there is this intentional effort within an organization to offer that up for everyone, and
Yeah.
to have those sponsorship programs, those mentorship programs, that's huge. Because I think, particularly if you don't have a very diverse workforce, and it hasn't maybe been very inclusive up until now, if that's something
Right.
you're really just starting efforts toward, that it might be more of an obstacle for people to feel comfortable pursuing that. But if it's offered up, if it's something that's presented as an option, people will be more likely to take that on.
Absolutely.
I know that, that was something for me that, yes, I was able to, like you, have some of those positive relationships and have some positive mentors in my life.
Yeah.
But there were also times where I worked at a place that I didn't have that. And,
Right.
and I was the only female, and,
Yeah.
so, feeling like you had that ally, that somebody that was there to help you grow,
Yeah.
that's huge.
It
And,
is.
yes, I love that you mentioned that, and that,
Yeah.
for leaders to really be intentional about cultivating that next generation of
Huge.
leaders and, rock stars within their organization.
Huge, huge,
Yeah,
huge.
yeah,
Yeah, that's something
that's
that
awesome.
like you're absolutely right, Dr. Hill. That's something that I just don't know if we see enough of even now,
Yeah,
just the succession planning, right? That's just like
right,
one of those things like we were like, oh, okay, like I guess this is important, or like we wait until someone moves on, that we're
right,
like now thinking about or retires and we're thinking about succession planning. But realistically, this should be part of core fundamental components within your leadership practices, to always think of like the what's next, right? And
right, right. Yes,
if I'm not here today, like who's going to take up this baton, right? There's
right,
nothing more empowering and or I guess really critical for the business than to really be able to have a succession plan.
right,
And
right.
that really
Yeah,
real and that at the core, right, creates we got to create other leaders, and we got to create
right.
other we have to mold and foster talent. And
Yes,
again, that goes back to that training and development and really being intentional with that, taking time to do that. I mean, we're all so busy, but
right.
there's resources out there, right? Let's
Yes.
utilize that,
Yeah.
leverage that. I mean, it's just one of those things that I don't see organizations thriving if they can't really be intentional in doing that.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting, I think we do have this tendency. I mean, we are legitimately all busy.
Yeah,
As I work with leaders and coaching and thinking about ways that they can be better about giving feedback and receiving feedback, and there is this tendency to be like, oh, well, I don't really have time for that. But really, and I know it sounds a little cliche to say, well, you don't really have time not to do it. Like you can't afford not to do it. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time. It doesn't have to. You can do a quality mentoring session in 20 to 30 minutes if you're doing it on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be, and then you'll see how much more efficient people are and how they're growing, and the return on that time investment is going to be tenfold.
so true.
So yeah, it's
So
there's
true.
really no excuse.
There really isn't. There really isn't. And
Yeah.
no, and as we all know, like I mean, we make time for what's important to us, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think we sometimes focus so much on the time span versus like the quality of that time, because
Yes.
it can be a 10-minute touch point just to say,
Right.
hey, I want to check in on you, but then the
Right.
takeaway is something completely different. And that is
Absolutely.
something that, even for job seekers or
Mm-hmm.
people that are in their own careers and looking to develop, you kind of have to own that, right? Like
Right.
you have to own your career development to an extent.
Right.
And that's one thing that I think differentiates people that really seem to find ways to be successful in promoting and interchanging their skill sets for new levels within their own career path, is that
Right.
they own in determining, okay, what is it that I need to do, what skills do I need to beef up on. Obviously,
Right.
it's always great when we can have someone to say, hey, this is something that I can see from my vantage point that you can beef up on or enhance in terms of a skill set, but then what do you do with that feedback, right?
Right.
So super
Yeah.
important.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So as we, it's hard to believe that we've already been about an hour here. I think you and
I
I could
know.
just chat for like 4 hours.
We can. I love
um,
talking to Dr. Kelly.
I know, I love our chats. So, as we start to wrap up, I'll, let open it up to you if there's any kind of closing thoughts that you have, any key do's and don'ts, or just any kind of closing words of wisdom, in relation to our session today.
Yeah, I mean, again, thank you so much, Dr. Kelly, for having
Mhm.
me on here. It was absolutely amazing to talk about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, just mostly because it's something that I've had to live through, right, in my own
Right.
career,
Yeah.
career path and development. But yeah, again, if I were to leave with one thing to say, that if we remembered anything throughout this, is just that from an organization perspective, super, super important that the commitment is ongoing. And
Mm,
to your point earlier, and some of the strategies and tips that we discussed, sometimes it takes small pieces, right, to start the
right.
process. It doesn't have to, you don't have to come in at looking at diversity and inclusion practices as a whole, throw everything in and let's figure this out.
Right.
But if you can start off with small pieces and just implementing certain practices, leveraging support, asking for help. I think that's something that is super vital, is knowing when to ask for outside help,
Yeah.
and getting consultants to come in to really give you true feedback. Super important. But as we know, organizations that make this a priority will win. And I mean, it's one of the things that I know for sure is just going to be super critical. It's critical now, but
Right.
as our world evolves too, this is going to be a really critical component for your revenue, your bottom line,
Right.
and to thrive as an organization. Much like for job seekers as well, you have the empowerment to do the research and review and say, hey, this is the type of culture and community that I want to be a part of. And so to do
Right.
that, sometimes it's just researching and looking online and looking at what organizations are posting and what's important to them, so that you're ensuring that you're in alignment with that, and that
Mm,
you'll be heard and seen and feel like you belong. It's so important to feel like you belong. To say that you
yeah.
just work somewhere is one thing, but to belong it's everything.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Oh, and of course, now I'm thinking of more things like I'm thinking about, for job
Yeah,
seekers, are there, key questions that maybe they should be asking as a part of
yeah.
the job search process, or key things that they should be, on the lookout for.
Yeah, obviously, like every company that is taking diversity and inclusion pretty seriously should at this point have some form of mission statement on their site and discussing kind of what they're doing as it relates to that, right? And
Right.
so, one of the questions that can be asked is just simply that: what are your diversity and inclusion initiatives? What does
Yeah.
the makeup of your organization look like from a diversity perspective? And so, really, just asking some of those questions and leaning in on how those responses come about. Again, as I mentioned, this is something that should be coming from top to bottom. So everyone should be vested in and understand what that looks like for the organization when that question's asked. So it
Right.
shouldn't really be like a, no, we don't know, right?
Right.
And you can kind of gauge from that perspective, just again, how important and serious an organization is about um, really diversity and belonging. So,
Right.
so yeah, that's definitely a key component, I would say, um, talent can look at and
Wonderful.
ask. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was
Yeah,
wonderful. I
it was
always love
awesome.
getting a chance to talk with you and touch base.
Same.
And yeah, I really appreciate it.
You too, Dr. Kelly.
All right.
So
Thank you
great chatting
so
with you.
much.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks,
Bye. All right.
everyone. Thank you.